And the Saints have a new head coach. It has been 84 years since I've heard that, or whatever the fuck the quote is. At long last, the wait is over, and despite several candidates saying no chance in hell, several other candidates saying only if you were my last option, and numerous reports, local, podcast, and nationally, corroborating the fact that pretty much all of those opinions came from the simple fact that Mickey Loomis is the Saints GM. Somehow, some way, they get the guy who probably was a top three potential get in this coaching cycle anyway. Like Ben Johnson was the bell cow. Aaron was the guy everybody wanted. Aaron Glenn is the up and comer that a lot of people believe is going to be a fantastic head coach. And Kellen Moore's kind of been the sleeper the whole time. Like, yeah, Joe Brady got the applause, but Joe Brady had that disastrous run in Carolina. Joe Brady doesn't have a ton of experience. Kellen Moore does, and has produced top offenses in three different locations and just dominating. Not just by talent, but by scheme and play calling. Took Steve Spagnuolo and that Kansas City defense, the two-time defending champions, took their lunch money in the Super Bowl. So we're gonna get into a little bit of my thoughts here about Kellen. As I alluded to, I've been wildly unimpressed with the Saints process, and I'm kind of glad things worked out this way. This is really, as a Saints fan, this is the best possible result. You have a situation where we got legitimately a really good candidate with a good pedigree and a good track record and a reasonable chance of success. But at the same time, it very clearly demonstrated how the rest of the league views the Saints and shined a spotlight on some of the things that have to change in order for the Saints to, get back to where they were under Sean Payton and Drew Brees for all those years, where they were one of the top franchises around the league. They were reliably, like, even at their worst, they were a really fun, good, competitive team that just wasn't quite there. That was their worst under Sean and Drew. Um, Post-Sean and Drew, their worst was laughing stock, embarrassment. Oh my God, how is this team so awful? And that only took 2 years for Dennis Allen to get there. Dennis and Mickey. So it's really nice just to have something to be positive about, something to be happy about, something to be anticipatory for. Kellen Moore is all of those things. So let's just kind of super fast talk about Kellen Moore. I'm not going to really get into like some of the dumb narratives and stuff too much, but like, how's he going to be a leader of men? Blah, blah, blah. He doesn't strike me as an alpha. First of all, if you're using the word alpha, you're probably an idiot. Or you have heard idiots use it and you think it means things it doesn't, but I'm not going to get into that. Here's the reality. For those who don't know, Kellen Moore's the winningest quarterback in NCAA history. He's won the most games. You've probably heard of Boise State and that ugly yet majestic blue field of theirs. What you may not know, especially if you're younger, or if you just haven't been paying attention, the only reason you know about Boise State, the only reason you know about that ugly, beautiful blue field is because of Kellen Moore. See, back then we had this thing called the BCS, which was a bunch of polls and models, and really it was just a bunch of people in the room figuring out how the hell do we put Alabama in the championship. And Kellen Moore was their absolute worst nightmare. Kellen Moore and the BCS teams that he was on, sorry, the Boise State teams he was on, not only were undefeated all the time, they were mollywhopping teams. And they would beat ranked teams. And there would always be an argument of Maybe we should put Boise State in the national championship. Now, were they legitimate national championship contenders? No. They just didn't have enough talent to be there. But were they in the conversation because they were undefeated, because they were really good, because they won all the style point metrics, because they had all of the other things that were being looked at? Yeah, yeah, they were, and they were Boise freaking State. That's who Kellen Moore was. He was an underdog quarterback who was dropping his nuts on the opposition all the way throughout college, won more games than anybody, top five, top six ish in basically all the scoring categories and production that you want. Was a washout as a pro. Was never going. He was another one of those classic quarterbacks who's unbelievable in college, had an amazing run, was never going to make it as a pro, and that's okay. Had a few years as a backup, quickly got into coaching, has been an offensive coordinator in Dallas, top 10 offense, San Diego, sorry, the Chargers, top 10 offense, now the Eagles, top 10 offense, most points scored in a postseason, and won the Super Bowl, scoring 40 points on a still very good Kansas City Chiefs defense. And if you want one more example of he just because he looks white and nerdy doesn't mean he's a bitch, which is really what a lot of you dum dums are saying. This is the guy who pulled an absolute Sean Payton move up big in the Super Bowl and went, "Oh, you guys want to have a fake comeback? Okay, cool. Well, here's a bomb to Devontae Smith. Game is over. Give it up." Dennis Allen could never. Dennis Allen would never. Clint Kubiak would never. Look, also, he doesn't have Derek Carr as a quarterback, so Kellen has a real quarterback, which is another thing that actually makes me really excited because all the reports that I've read and all the things that I've heard and all the things I've heard from certain discords that I'm a member of where we get to hear things sometimes pretty much all agree on the same thing. One of Kellen Moore's sticking points for coming to New Orleans was Derek Carr ain't going to be my starting quarterback. I believe that I am a good enough coach and I can turn this team around. I can't do it with that freaking albatross attached to me. Right there and then, he's got me sold. Because the reality is, if you want to win somewhere between 5 and 9 games and kind of sort of be competitive and play the what if game every single year, Derek Carr is the best quarterback for you. If you're actually trying to like be a competitor, there is no evidence that says he can be that guy, but he's going to be just good enough not to suck enough to get somebody but good enough to replace it. Why the heck would Kellen Moore want to walk into a situation where that's what he's looking at? Makes no sense. So him wanting Carr out of here is a plus for me, not just because I don't like Carr, but also because it shows that he has actually a clear vision of what he wants to do, how he wants to turn things around, but also what it's going to take to turn those things around. You got to clean up the cap. Okay. Well, you kind of have two choices. You can cut Carr, and you got to touch some of the other contracts, or you can keep Carr. Now you got to do it. You're going to get rid of a bunch of other things. So also, keeping Carr puts more money on the books for future years, so you're going to have to do the same thing next year. Kellen understands someone like Cam Jordan, someone like Honey Badger, even someone like Demario, like they are approaching washed at warp speed. There's a lot more in the cupboard for this offense than there is for the defense, frankly, especially healthy. Those guys can still kind of contribute, and at least they bring leadership. At least they bring value in the locker room. They bring value in training camp. They bring value in the film room. Derek Carr doesn't really bring any of those things. And if you're a huge Derek Carr fan and you're about to tell me, he's a great quarterback and everybody loves him and blah, 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 bullshit. Wasn't that in Oakland? I knew people who had a lot of time around him. Bullshit. Wasn't that in Vegas? They sent him home for a reason. Hasn't been that in New Orleans. And there's plenty of cookies for you to follow. Breadcrumbs. I'm fat. I don't eat breadcrumbs. I eat cookies. Clearly. Um, Like it's very obvious. Like, is he the worst human being in the history of mankind? No, we don't need to be hyperbolic, and I'm not being hyperbolic. Is he a great teammate? Is he a mentor? No, he's not. You can be as simple as watch how much time Derek Carr spent around Spencer Rattler in all the games where Spencer Rattler started, trying to coach him up or help him see coverages or any of those types of things. You can't find that footage because it doesn't really exist. Maybe there's a couple of instances, but it's not much. It was noticeably absent. Go watch him the one time Jake played. Huge difference. It's that simple. Guy went to his alma mater. He chose sides. That's not a great vet for your locker room. We can take all the throwing teammates out into the bus and the not showing up and doing special stuff and trying to build rapport with guys and all the other things you would expect out of a quarterback, like him not doing any of those. Take all that stuff aside. That one thing kind of tells you what you need to know. So you get rid of that guy. What that opens you up for is the best case scenario if I'm coming in as an offensive minded young head coach. I'm going to get a young roster that's going to grow with me. I'm going to start with a young quarterback. Now, that's probably going to be Spencer Rattler, but let's say they fall in love with Jackson Dart and he's there at 9. Or Shador drops to 9, and Shador and his daddy decided they don't want to go to New Orleans, but maybe with Kellen, they're like, you know what? That guy actually, he can give me a real chance to have major success. I'll play for him. And they don't throw a fit and pull a Philip Rivers, and now you get Shador. Or you pick a guy in the second or the third round and they take their swing on there, and that guy and Spencer fight it out in camp for who's going to be the starter. You go into this year, you build the best roster you can, well, taking your vitamins, meaning those cap hits, cut Carr, take the other costs, get some of the other bad contracts either off the books or in a position where they come off the books next year or the year after, but you basically clean up your cap over a year to 2 year period. Going to next year, if this year works out well and either the new young rookie or Spencer plays well and shows promise and you're like, I can build with this guy, great. You have a quarterback that's viable on a rookie contract. They don't. They're going into a way, way stronger draft, probably with a really high pick, cap space, and a full allotment of resources to go up and go get your guy. Because I'll tell you this, it's a lot easier to trade into the top 3 and guarantee yourself, you know, your top quarterback candidate or something like that, or your second guy or whatever, if you have cap space so that you can fill out the roster around them to give that quarterback a chance. Hell of a lot easier. Kellen's smart enough to understand that. That's a plus. Mickey's not. Mickey wants to keep Derek Carr. Thankfully, Mickey's not clearly making all of the decisions. Thank you, God. Really excited about that. But bringing this really just back to purely Kellen, Coach Teeth's. You look at his track record. Underdog at Boise State, overachiever, you know, fought tooth nail, coach's son. Like, you pick your stereotype, they all fit. Like, overachieved, dominated against expectations. Gets into the pros, doesn't do it as a quarterback. Look how quickly he made the transition as a coach. Went up those ranks fast. Had success in Dallas, had success in LA, had success in Philly. But here's the really important part. This is why I'm genuinely excited about Kellen Moore. He ran 3 completely different offenses. What he did with Dak was built around their roster and Dak's skill set. What he did with Herbert was built about their roster and Herbert's skill set. What he did with Hurts built off of Hurts' roster and Hurts' skill set. And then what we saw in the playoffs. Because through big parts of the year, their real focus was don't have Hurts throw the damn ball more than you have to. We've got an amazing offensive line. We have this generational talent running back having a phenomenal year, and we're going to lean on that. And we're not going to ask Jalen to be the whole hub of the offense because that's just not who he is. He's not, never, nor will he ever be a Drew, a Peyton, a Tom, even a Patrick. even a Josh, like a guy like that, where like it's like he's gonna throw 15 passes in a quarter and throw for 240 yards and 3 touchdowns, and like the game is over. Like that's probably not gonna happen. At least not the same way. Now he throws out outside the numbers a ton. He throws them actually really really well. Kellen focuses on what he does well. Then you get into the playoffs. You get into the NFC Championship game. Jalen Hurts had one of his best games. You get into the Super Bowl. Jalen Hurts has one of his best games. Part of that is because Saquon was so good and so dominant, teams sold out to stop the run. Moore was smart. Moore had a plan for that. But he attacked it with things that Hurts does well. They attacked it going to their star wide receiver, A.J. Brown, who's a stud, but also, like to me, if you want one play from the Super Bowl that tells me for the first time since Sean Payton walked out that door for the last time and bought snacks for all the local media, that we have a real good offensive coach in the building. The big play to Dallas Goedert early in the game. That's not Dallas Goedert being really good and getting open. That's Kellen Moore being really good and getting him open. They didn't have a lot of that with Clint last year. Healthy or otherwise with guys. Like they did some things again. In the run game, Clint did some really nice stuff. The passing game, I was left woefully unimpressed most of the year. Pete Carmichael called some good stuff, but Pete's not a good play caller. He designed some things, but he's not a good play caller. Kellen has both aspects. And it's just one play and it doesn't tell you everything. But if you look at the play and you look at how it's set up and you look at how it was designed, it makes things easy on the quarterback. Those are what we've been talking about for a while. Layups, creating those easy completions, those easy first downs, those rhythm building plays. But also those plays allow you to run similar plays and cause the defense to overreact and create, second reactions or a different action off of the same look, and now you get a big play, even a bigger play, you get a touchdown, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Those are the things that really good coaches do. He's doing that. Now he has to prove he's a head coach. You never know until you know, but I'm not worried about the leadership aspect. The guy's been running locker rooms his entire life. He was a quarterback. He was an extremely successful quarterback, an underdog guy, which that actually kind of does matter because he's used to having to earn people's respect and over communicate and command a room and make them buy in. Not every guy's used to that. Like Johnny Manziel didn't have to deal with that. That was part of the problem. When he got to the pros, had to do that, had never done that before. Johnny also had a lot of other problems, so maybe I shouldn't have picked him as an example. But you get the idea. Um, so I'm just really not worried about that aspect for Kellen. It's does he have the organizational savvy to run an entire team, to have a holistic vision from the top down? I think he probably does. He's extremely well spoken of by his peers as an extremely intelligent guy, and he's got the track record to back it up. And the fact that he's run three very different offenses for three very different teams and quarterbacks shows that he is malleable and he understands the importance of adjusting to your circumstances. So, again, despite being a laughing stock around the league, being told not a chance in hell, being told only if you're my last option, literally having a nah, you suck, no, you suck more battle with Mike McCarthy in the media, with the Saints going, we're not really that interested in Mike going, y'all don't really have a lot of options. And literally playing out in the media because of what a bad job it's considered to be. You go through all of that, and you end up with a guy who's probably the third best candidate and very well could end up being the best coach from this hiring cycle. We'll see. I don't know how you can not be happy with that. Look, the Saints fell back asswards into this, but I don't really care. We got what looks to be a good head coach, and if we've learned nothing else from the last couple of years, coaching matters, and it matters a hell of a lot in this game. And having a good coach can make a lot of stuff look a lot better. And after the last few years, no DA, no Jersey roofer. I'll take Coach Teefs.